Okay, I'm going to introduce myself. Hi. So I can see that the afternoon is wearing on. I'll try and keep moving quickly on this, but again, I'm going to be doing a bit of a demo, and who knows where that can go. So I'll try and I'm going to rely on you guys to again tell me if I'm sort of typing in something wrong, just because that's what happens when you're standing up the front and everyone's looking at you. What I'm going to talk about is low code with Flowable, and of course, when we say Flowable, of course, it could be the open source, or it could be the some of the enterprise products we've got, and I'll cover some of that while we're going through that. But yeah, I just wanted to start explaining some of the ideas in which what's driving us in some of the things we're doing. So some of the things we're getting enthusiastic about CMMN is around being able to enable some low-code type of things. Now, the first thing is when we say low-code, it can mean different things to different people. And we've been using the term deep low-code. And really the idea here is it's not low-code from the point of view, or no-code where it's simple, I'm just going to fill in a sequence of forms and it's a form flow type of thing, or a fairly straightforward if this then that type of thing. These are powerful executable models that we're talking about. We all know and love BPMN. We know we can do some deep and very complex things with that. So the idea is that you can still have some low-code features, but these are driven by powerful models. And the low-code is not about trying to get rid of developers. If you talk to marketing, you'll hear people talk about low code and no code, and hey, we don't need so many developers. That's not what's driving us here. So what's driving us is really just that reality of what is driving our customers, and probably a lot of you people, which is the market and the businesses are demanding that solutions are produced way more dynamically, way more frequently, and they have to evolve in a far more agile way than before. So you don't have a year to create your project or get your product out. You've got a few weeks. So really, the low code is about business agility. It's how do we actually get these solutions out there quickly in the first place, and then once they're out, can we manipulate them and get iterations of those in a more evolutionary way happening quickly? The whole idea is that the deep low code, having these deep, rich, complex, sophisticated executable models, that brings enterprise scale and enterprise complexity and enterprise power to the low code. Now, at the same time, we're not ignoring the citizen developer. This is one of the terms that is used with low code is, get rid of all you guys and just let the business users develop the solutions. The citizen developer is a beneficiary of this work, because as you move towards more low code type of systems, then it can, in a very lightweight way, give no code. So without writing any code at all, you can animate your ideas of what is happening, the flows, the forms. You can do those simple form flows and simple if this then that. And where that is a benefit is not so much from the business user being able to create their own solution. I mean, that's nice. It doesn't happen very often in reality. But where it makes a real difference is the level of engagement you can get with your business users. When we talk about the conversation earlier about CMMN and BPMN, and people can look at a BPMN diagram and have some understanding about what's happening there, whether they're technical or not. That's what it is. The more you've got around models, the less code you've got, then it's easier to interact and work with your business users. And by giving them some of these low code, no code access to these systems, you find in reality that the business users start getting more engaged with you for two reasons. One is they're actually contributing to something which they see come out and they're using. And when it's in production, they feel that they were actually part of that journey. It wasn't, sitting with someone saying, no, I don't understand what a Scrum Master is. I don't know how to write. I don't know what you're on about, Mr. Scrum Master, a story and things like that. Let me just show you what I mean. And look, this is what I mean. Now do you get it? Great. Okay, well, when I see that running in production, because I was actually the person showing you how it worked, I feel that I'm actually part of the overall solution. The other benefit is also it gives people an understanding of some of the challenges that we face trying to automate some human-based systems. So the concept of low-code, we as people working with businesses and the businesses themselves are beneficiaries from this drive towards low code. But like I say, that's not what's driving us. It is more about how do we actually get repeatable, rapid evolutions in solutions and products. And so what I'm going to show you is stuff that's built on the low code. And I'm putting this up now just to help explain. I mean, there's been various different demos by different people. And so when I'm going to be showing you something that's running actually in Flowable Engage, Mika showed you the chat before. I'm not going to show you any of the chat, but that's what actually you're going to be seeing. What we have, and you will have seen different bits of this in different ways, at the heart of everything Flowable, there is the open source engines, Flowable Core. That's the open source, the three engines that rich, complex, sophisticated, liberally licensed. Everyone here knows and loves them and knows how powerful and meaningful they are. What we've done from the enterprise side of things is layer on additional services and capabilities that we find our customers need pretty much every time. And we layer them up in such a way. So Flowable Platform has all the back-end services that you need throughout the stack higher up. And I'm not going to go into details of what they are. It's not a sales pitch. And then Flowable Work is where it layers the user interface, the end user interface, someone who wants to work with tasks or work with processes, work with cases, all the way up to Engage, where there's now the chat integration there. And alongside all of those, there's some tools which, again, you've seen different people showing different things there. So on the enterprise side, Flowable Design is the web-based design tool, and I think a few people have shown that. I think Tim was showing stuff within Modeler, the open source version. Flowable Forms is a more advanced forms engine, and again, you'll have seen bits of that, and I'll show you a bit more of that as well. Again, there is a core open source Flowable engine, but there's more sophistication with the enterprise version. And then Flowable Control, again, I'll just, as I'm going through, I will show you that, just so you're not surprised. That's sort of like the enterprise version of the open source admin tool. So as we're demoing things, what we're really demoing is the power of the engines, and we're just showing the layering that we've put on top as sort of illustrative of what you can do and illustrative of what a lot of our customers are using. Sales mode. And yes, we've got these three models, and we've already seen the type of things you can do with those. The more there is to model, the less code there is, and the more you can sort of use a model, the more you can share and collaborate with people that don't understand code. And what so obviously with the open source, those are the three core models that you have. What we've got with the Flowable Platform service, the enterprise layer, is some additional things. So there's services that give you full indexing across everything, so you can do all sorts of searching, you do sorts of analytics and aggregated type of things. Rather than making 5 API calls, you can make 1 API call and get everything back in one go. Content services be able to, sort of ingest Microsoft Office documents and spit out PDFs or thumbnails or images, things like that. So additional services there. But the thing I'm going to focus on for this talk is the additional models as well. So there's additional models which follow the same pattern where you describe something and we package those up in some format, whether it's XML or JSON or something like that. And those are deployed alongside the CMMN, BPMN, or DMN models as well. But they enrich the overall process application, case application that comes out of it at the end. So I'm going to give you a few examples of those actually running. Again, just to illustrate how you can use particularly something like CMN to drive this. So yeah, that was the very quick intro. And what I was going to do now was just go in and experience the joys of live demos, and let's just see how we go with that. So what I've got running locally here is I've got Flowable Engage running, and like I say, I'm not going to be using the chat stuff. I'm just going to be using the sort of normal Flowable Work UI. And this is Flowable Design. This is the enterprise design tool. If you're used to Flowable Model of the open source one, you'll see a lot of similarities, but it's just easier for me to show some of the advanced capabilities from in here. So what I've got 3 applications already designed, and I'm actually going to focus on one. Now, these examples, this is based on the free trial download. So if any of you have already tried that, you'll see elements of this that you'll feel familiar with. If you haven't tried it before, what you can do is you can download the 30-day trial version of this, and you'll be able to play with something very similar and do a lot of these things I'm showing you with here. So treat this as if this is interesting, then you can go and play some more. So I'm going to focus on this particular app, and an app for us is a way, again, for people that use Flurble in different ways, an app for us is a way of just bundling together a set of models and deploying them to runtime. Typically, it's a set of case models or process models. Now, in this app model, I've got a bunch of things. I'm actually going to focus by starting on a case. So really the top, the entry point to all of this is, as we've been saying, we've been using CMMN case as a way of giving us the overall container, the way of orchestrating and managing the overall behavior of an application. And what I've got here is a simple case. And if you're not familiar with CMMN, I'm not going to go into a tutorial here, but visually, I'll give you some explanation. So we've got 3 stages to this case. So when we start the case, there's 3 potential stages that this case can go through. Initially, there's only one that will be active because there's no constraints on it. It's just as soon as I start the case, that stage is going to become active, and that's the top stage, the applying for a loan. And with that stage, there's a couple of elements within there. One of them is a process task. So that is going, as soon as the stage becomes active, that process is going to get kicked off. And actually, before I kick off the stage, the case, I can actually have things like a start form associated with the case. So when I say I'm going to start a case, it can actually prompt me for some information that I feed into the case. In this case, I've got a very simple form where I'm just going to fill in the name of somebody who's applying for the loan, and that's going to get fed in as a sort of variable entry piece of data for the case. So I've got the case. It's going to be, when I kick it off, it'll ask me for the person's name, and then it's going to kick off that process. Now, with that process, there's a number of things. First of all, the process is linked in here. I can bring it up here. It's a multi-step process involving users and a bit of system stuff. Again, this should be familiar for some of you. And what it's going to do, it's going to follow through some user tasks, and it's going to, first of all, ask for some additional information. And again, there's a form associated with that with some more complex layouts that you get with the Flurble forms stuff. And again, I'll show a bit more, talk a bit more about examples of that later. But basically, we follow through a set of steps. There's a decision table as well to make some decisions about the application. So when we start the application, we ask for certain information. One of the pieces of information is things about their age and their status. And if they're under 24, this rule says, then we're going to give some advice as a string that they're young. And so we may want further checks. There's also another variable that's being set, which is a default path. So this is suggesting that when things go on, probably the default is to reject this. It doesn't mean that we do reject it, but that's the preferred default. So if we look at the overall process again, so we're going to follow through this process, and what I'm going to do is show you how some of the without doing any coding, we can enrich this process. So we're going to collect some information about the person applying for the loan, review based on some of that data, whether we think they're a viable person to loan to, and then put it to a person to review that. And again, we've got a form associated with that. Here's some of the power of the more advanced forms. I've got a form here that's basically embedding the existing form, so you can have nested subforms here. It's embedding that existing form, so that form is just going to reappear. But I've also said that it's not enabled, so it's just going to show the information from the existing form in a read-only way. But I've added in an extra field here at the bottom, which is going to say the advice that was given by the decision table. So what will happen is, as we follow through this, We'll collect up some information, the decision rule will run, decision table will run, we'll then present somebody else, it's going to be the same person just for the demo to make it easy, same person is going to review that with the information there, and then they're going to decide whether they're going to accept it, reject it, and it's going to follow through the different paths. So, yeah, let me just kick this off because let's just start the case running, and then I'll talk through elements of it as we go along. Oh, the other piece before I kick it off there on the case model was this user task, user event. So there's a user event in this stage. So this event is available in the model, and what we've said is that we're giving it a name, cancel application. So that's meaningful. When we come to actually running this live, you'll see where that gets used. So basically we're saying that when this stage is active, as well as kicking off the process, there is now a user event that the CMMN engine is listening to. And we can use that in a low-code way to actually present information to the user. So here we go. I'm going to kick off working with that case from, this is the Flowable Work user interface or Flowable Engage user interface where I'm just working with starting cases and working with processes. I'm into like someone with all the permissions, so you can see absolutely everything depending on what your role is. You will just see different applications, different things available to you. So I'm going to start a new case, and it's the loan case. And here there was the start form associated with the case which was asking for the full name. So I'm going to say that I am Mike Manners. Of course, this is not a real form. This is just a demoware example. So I've now started the case, and as a person who started the case, I can see the status of this case throughout. Again, there's all sorts of things that we'll come back to about what you can do for that. You can see that there were 3 stages in the case, and we show that visually. So we're in the first stage, applying for a loan, and as we go through, we'll actually sort of advance through the stages, and you can see them. And we can see that there's a task there for the first person, which was to get details about Mike Manners for this loan. Normally that would be assigned to somebody else to fill in, but I'm just going to be running this as the same single user. If I click on this, I'll actually go to that task. And I can see there's some information for me to fill in. So let me fill it in and we can get going. So you can see I'm 21, I'm German, and I earn some money. And I want a loan of some money, maybe not that much, and I'm living in rented accommodation. There's a whole bunch of other things that you can do within here. So you get a flavour of it from the information here. So you can collaborate around the task. I'm not going to go into that, but you can have conversations with other people. You can invite other people to collaborate with you on filling in a form or solving a particular problem. You can create ad hoc subtasks. So if actually filling in this information requires some other steps, I could create some subtasks from that and assign them to other people to get them filled in to help me complete the overall task and things like that. I can even attach documents to it for reference purposes later on, and you can create quite complex full content libraries underneath that if you want to, but I'm not going to go there today. So if I fill in the details for Mike Manners, we will now advance in the case, and we've gone through the decision table, and if I look at, I won't go into looking at that at the moment. I should carry on with what the demo was, which is to do low code. So at this point, I can look, and here we can see that we've got the form with the information I filled in before, but also that extra piece of text field with the advice from the decision table that this person is young, so needs further checks. And if you remember, the other thing that it was going to remember was that we really should ideally reject this unless there's reasons not to. So at this point, I could say, well, okay, yeah, I am going to reject this because the advice is that the person is too young and we do need further checks. But what I should also do, before I do that though, let's go back to the case. And if you remember, in the case model, when we're still in that first stage, there was the ability to actually cancel the application. So what's happened is because that user event is there, then our user interface, and it could be any of the user interfaces, whether you're in the mobile app or any of the things, it can query the model and say what user actions are appropriate and available for this current user at this particular point in time. and then you can have things about saying, where you render those within the UI. So I had this as being rendered just within the menu thing. So if I was to add other user events here, then they would be showing, for this particular stage, they would be showing there. And again, if I was to click on that now, it would follow the path, which would complete the case and close out the process that I was running through. Anyway, let's continue with, so I might say at this point that I'm going to reject this case, and we will carry on to go around the injection route in the path. Now, at this stage, somebody may have said to me, do you know what, actually, if it's a young person, if we get additional identification, then it's actually okay for us to accept them, and we don't need to reject them. And so, I've blown it, I've gone too far. So is there a way for me to recover? Of course there is a way for me to recover. I ring up a very nice system admin, and I say, listen, system admin, I've gone and put in the wrong thing, and I've gone too far. Can you actually roll back this particular instance for me? And the system admin, like all system admins, are really friendly and helpful people. And they say, yes, of course. Yes, of course. Let me go and look at the process instances that we've got running. And I can see, hopefully I can see, that that particular process instance, I can see it's in the rejection stage, and you actually want me to roll back and reconsider the thing. Okay, so if we go from this state and say we really want to go back to there, I can say I want to change the process state. And we jump back as if, it's not quite as if nothing had happened, because we still remember that we did actually go through. No data is lost, or the audit trail is still fully there. But we've reset the state of the process. Now, one of the really nice things about the Flowable 6 engine, and I'm not going to go into the details here, is you can do that type of thing in really complex. That could be within a call activity or nested sub-process, or a sub-process within a case or something. You can do a lot of sort of changing the state of processes, and Flowable acts completely predictably and completely correctly, which is not the case for the older generation process engines. So I've reset the process state for my process, but also the other thing I did was I actually typed in the salary wrong as well. So I'm actually going to come in and modify the salary and just say, actually, there was an extra naught on the end, which is important in this case because there's somebody may be young, but they're earning an awful lot of money, and so therefore we'll give them as much as they ask for. So I've reset the state of that. So sysadmin, wonderful, friendly person, has reset that. And if I refresh, we can see we're back at that point where we're reviewing Mike Manner's application. Now, if you remember, the other thing I needed to do was to do an additional identity check. Now, we didn't have that in the original process, so come on, what am I going to do? Well, luckily, we've already thought of that, and there's a little action here called add identity check. And so at this point, if I click this, it's actually going to insert the identity check process into the current process, and it won't let the process continue further until I've completed the identity check as well. So I'm going to press that now. Do I really want to do it? Yes, I do. And you're saying, but this was a talk about low code, weren't you? What was all that about? Well, it is low code because that action there, obviously, for that to be there, I had to write some code, did I? No, I didn't have to write any code whatsoever. That was all modeled. So if I go back to design, and if I go back to the overall application model, jump right back out. What part of the application, one of the things that I bundled in there was another process snippet, the get additional identification. So that's a little bit of process that's deployed and ready to be used, but it's not actually a part of the process that I'm actually running. So magically, I've injected that. Well, okay, we don't believe in magic, and there's no code here. So how did you do that? Well, actually, again, there's another piece of model that I was able to use for that, and that is where am I? Let me jump right out. I can't see it here. Identity. There we go. That was a piece of model that says, I want to add in some behavior, an action. So there's an action model concept that we've got here. I want to add in an action. And that action, yes, there is some developer here. So guys, don't worry, you've still got a job. Somebody did had to write this little piece of code, this bot, that was going to actually do the work. But now I've got that little piece of code that will inject a process snippet into any other active process. I can now use this action definition to say, when do I want to use it, how do I want to use it, and everything else. So what I'm going to do is, thank you, Mr. Developer, for creating this fantastic little bot code for me to use. I now want to use this in my app, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to inject, use this code. I'm going to pass in the what this code needs is the process key that I want to inject. So this is the process key that's going to be passed as a signal into that piece of code, so get the additional identification. But I also don't want that to happen anywhere. I want to say, where do I want that to happen? So I can put constraints on where in the UI, whatever UI should this go into. So I've said I want it to go in the menu. I could have it going into other places, like a quick access. So if you're, or slash actions, if you're in a chat context, just doing slash insert, then you would have this action being available to you. I'm also saying, what icon to use here, so I can just choose an icon. I want to have it. I also want to constrain it. I don't want this action appearing everywhere in every menu. I only want it to happen when it's scoped by a task. So when I'm in a task, this action is appropriate. I can inject a process snippet at a task point. So there's a number of different things you can do around here. I've kept it fairly simple, but you see, yes, there's a bit of code somewhere. It's low code, it's not no code. But once a bit like the event stuff that we were talking about before, once someone's done some hard work and encapsulated it, I can then reuse that in different models within different environments to do different things for my particular purposes, reuse and redeploy. So yeah, so I've got that action there. So that was how that appeared when I was in a task. That action was there because I defined that particular model and I deployed that model with it. Some of the other things that would be going on in there in that process, in that snippet, let me bring that up. In that snippet, we've got a task that's asking for some information, and it's asking for an image, a document for the identification purposes. And I've said that I'm going to attach an image, with the, my photo or whatever with it. But I've also said, as well as it just being an image file that I'm loading, I actually want it to have a content type. And that means that there may be metadata that I want to collect about this, particular image. Is it a, driving license photo? Is it a passport photo license? Or what is it? And what metadata do I want to collect around that? And also I can say that I have to have metadata. You're not allowed just to drop in an image and not tell me what type of image it is. So just by clicking these two things within the modeling, I'm not just going to allow someone to drop in an image on here. I'm actually going to be able to collect and create metadata about that image as well and insist on it. So how do I define a content model? Well, of course, in the same way, it's a model, and it's one of these other types of models. So what I can do is I can also define content models. So here I've got a bunch of content models, different types of identification that you can have. And if I pick one of these, like the passport, then all I've got basically, in a simple way, is I'm associating a form definition that describes the metadata associated with this content type. So whenever this content type is used, when I create or edit this type of content, it's going to use that particular form and collect that metadata around it. So basically, I can define all these different types of content type, and then when I bundle these up in the overall application and make it available, so you can see here I've got as well as the CMMN, BPMN and DMN, I've got all these other content models as well as the additional, actually it's much easier in a list view there where you can see what's going on, the type of thing. I can publish these additional models with it. So now at runtime, when I start using this, when I actually go to that form and say I want to add in an image, it's going to see, well, what models, content models are available to me and show me and allow me to pick from that. And again, I haven't had to do any code. I've just been modeling. I've been saying, for this stage in this process, this is the form. For this particular field in the form, this is the type of data, this type of content you can have. And when you give it to me, I want to collect, this set of, these are the allowable forms of identity that I want to collect. So that's all the additional application solution type of models that we're adding in there. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else I want to say about it at this stage? No, perhaps let's just keep going with this. So no, they're all bundled up there. So now when I actually go and say accept, what we're going to do, actually let me go remind you of the process we're going to be running through. Go back to the, to the process. So if you remember, we're back at this stage now where we're reviewing. I'm going to accept, and we're going to follow through the path, assign the manager, that's what will be next, and then generate a letter after that. So let's just get following through. So I can now say accept this, and we're going to move forward. But we haven't moved forward in the process because, of course, what I did, I injected that other process and said we have to do that sub-process, inject a process before we continue on here. So I actually do need to attach the identification here. So here's the field where I'm going to attach the identity. I'm going to use good old Ben's photo here. And you can see it's insisting that I have attached a content type. I have to say what type of image this is from. And if I look at the list here, we can see, well, here's the list of the the driving license. That's one of the content models that I associated with this application, and so it's available for me here. I can do all sorts of things to say at this point in this time, I only accept content. You've got to fill in, an image, and it's of this type, and you've got to fill in that metadata there. So yeah, I can just say, okay, it's this is the information. It's the front photo from my driving license, so I can complete that, and on we go forward. And of course, there was another step in that process which somebody had to approve it. And everything's coming back to me just to make the demo simple. And I can look at that. I can see it's Ben, and I can see the metadata about him, and it's a driving license, and all these things look good. So I can, okay, I'm going to accept that ID, and on we go. And now finally we can go. Now, if you remember, we started this where it was somebody that was coming in, and they were too young, so the process, the decision table has said, the business rules have said, actually our default is to reject. Because of that, what I've got in the process definition, if I come here, is basically if on these conditions here, I can actually say, what path I can take. So, I can actually say if the loan outcome was accept and the default path was accept, I can take the accept path without having to do anything else. Same with the rejecting. If I was to look at the conditions here, I can see that there, if the outcome from the review was to reject and the advice from the business rules were to reject, then again I can continue on here. And it's only the middle case where, if the outcome was to escalate, or if the default path was not the same as the outcome, then, if the user has said, I accept this, when the decision table had said, I'd propose we reject it, then we go through an escalation. So that's why it's now going through this route. So we're now going through the escalation, and again, there's an additional form here which is added in the extra, sort of reused form here, and added in some extra information that the initial reviewer said we should accept this, but this has come to escalate to you, obviously, because the advice was that we shouldn't. I'm going to say I'm going to accept it. Finally, now we can go down the acceptance path where we're going to assign a manager with this. This time I can say that we're going to have Ben Snow being the manager for his own loan. An associated photo with this. Now, when I accept this, it's going to follow on to the next stage where it's going to generate a document for me. In the process that we had, once we've assigned the manager, we're actually going to create a letter. And that letter is based off a template. And again, it's a template model. So we've got a Word template which has got some placeholders, and it's just going to plug in the data from the process so far, generate a new document from that, and actually then, produce us as a PDF that we could then use attached to an email or whatever else. and associate that with a variable as well. So like I said, once this has been generated, we can use it later on in the process, just like you can any other process variable. Now, of course, a template is a simple thing. What makes it more interesting is, well, normally there are different types of templates. And we talked before when we were talking about chat. You could have templated chat, and you can have templated chat in different languages. But also these templates can follow more than just a single, okay, it's the language that we want to differentiate on. You can have all sorts of different dimensions. So one of the things that we've got in this particular model, well, if I stick with the model, hang on, I'm jumping about. Yes, I do. Forget everything I've done. One of the other things we've got here is a template. Hopefully somewhere there is a template. There we go, right. There we go, an acceptance letter. So we've got a template model that's associated with this as well. So if I go and look at this template model, now it could have just been a Word template or a PDF template there, but actually what we've got is we've got a template with variations. So there's different templates that you could use to generate this particular letter. In this case, I've got two different dimensions that it could be based on the nationalities. So when we filled in the nationality in the form, that could be one dimension that we could take. And the other is the default path. So if the default path was, to reject or accept, then we can have a different template. We may want, if the default path was to reject, we might give a more sort of substantial sort of response saying we're really trusting you a lot to behave and all this. So I've got two different dimensions here, and then I can have any number of variations of templates around that. So I've got two variations here. So if the person is from the UK, and the default path was to reject them, we're going to use one template. Otherwise, we're going to assume they were, from the UK, as in this is going to be an English letter, and that the acceptance path was taken there. But I could have had any number of different additional dimensions, any number of different variations here, and having the default values allows me to have a catch-all to work with those. So at the next stage where I'm generating the letter, it's going to be different depending on what I entered earlier on. And of course, I've just realized I should have chosen a different nationality, but there we go. That's life in the fast lane of doing demos. So now if I say complete, we'll now go to the next stage, informing acceptance, and this is where it's generating that document, and it would have picked the template that's most appropriate given those different dimensions that here, which was to do with the path we took and the nationality. And as everything slowly warms up on my machine running here, there's the document that's been generated, and if I zoom in, you can see, it's put in some of the numbers there that were involved in that. And so we can continue on with the overall case. Now, we're continuing in the case. We finished the process. So I'm going to again sort of show you a bit of CMMN and then also show you how exploiting CMN in low code comes to play, assuming we're doing okay on time. Somebody else is going to have to give me a reminder on time because, of course, I'm not going to stop myself. Yes, so you can see here there's a couple of, we've moved on the stage. We're in the second stage now, and there's a couple of tasks that have been created, a get the first month repayment and also a repay early task. So, where did they come from? If we jump back to the model, and let's go back to the app and look at the case. And this particular case model, we're now in this second stage where we're managing the loan. And you can see, well, here we go. There's the two tasks. So there were no conditions on those tasks starting. So as soon as this stage became active, when the successful application came through, these two tasks were started, both concurrently at the same time there. Now, the interesting thing here is one of those is actually a process. So a process has been initiated, which is going to get 12 monthly repayments, and we can see that. Let's just take a look now. So that process is going to get called. You can see it's a very simple repeating task, and it's done in sequential, as a sequential multi-instance beast. So you can see it's going to run 12 times, so one for each month, and we're going to count up each one, and it's sequential. So, when you finish one task, the multi-instance is going to go in sequential mode, get the next task created. We could have done those in 12 in parallel, so we could have said this was a parallel multi-instance, and you had instantly 12 tasks created for you by this particular process. So we're just going to go through, getting each month's repayment as a task by that particular process. The other thing that was started was this repay early task. And so anytime we could complete the repay early task, and this is where some of the power of the CMMN, so I'm jumping away from Loco, but this is some of the power of the CMMN. So what we've got here is, it's not mutual self-destruction, it's just, winner takes all. So when one of these activity completes, it kills off or completes the other activity. So if I complete the repay early task, that will kill off and complete the get repayments process and all the tasks within that. Or if I do actually go through all the repayments, once I got to the 12th repayment, that will finish and that will kill off the repay early task. So trying to do that in BPMN is actually, have fun in coffee tea time to do your BPMN model for that. Now, to make that more fun and get back into the low-code context, what I might not want to do is just have that, repay early task being there and being noise and everything else. What I really want to do is say that I actually want that to be a manual. Where can I find this? It's doing things in little and large. Oh, there it is, manual activation. Okay, I've now said that this is a manually activated task. So when we get to this stage, we'll actually run through this again. Next time when I deploy this application, that second task won't be created automatically, but it will be available for me to start, and that's where I'll show you the low-codey bit. So I shall save this now. Now, anything else? There's some other things I want to do while I'm here. So let me remind myself of what I want to do. Yes, so something else. So we're going to make that manually started. The other thing I want to do is I actually want to put some extra security, or actually relax the security around some of the execution of these things. So at the moment it's running with a default security model. One of the other types of models you can have is a security model. And then in this particular app, any of you that were sharp-eyed, you would have seen that amongst some of the other models was a security... let me just add this. This is where I forget what I've done and what I haven't done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump out and actually create a security policy. So I'm going to... Oh, actually, no, I've got one here. So I'm going to modify this. So here's a security policy. This is a fairly default one, but what I'm going to do is actually relax some of the constraints on it. So I'm going to allow a participant, so this is someone who's invited into the process to work on it, to be able to do some additional things. So I'm going to say that, I've actually done it already. So I'm saying here that a participant can actually edit a task. I also want them to be able to do things like complete a task, which they wouldn't normally be able to do, and reassign tasks and things like this, set the assignee. There's some additional things that I've set up in this particular security model. So what I can do is, if I actually go back into my process, what I can do is, with this particular process, I can say I want to have a security policy associated with this. And I'm going to reference... no, I need to add it to the model. Sorry, this is where I'm going the wrong way round. Let me go and add that to the app first. Okay, then I shall be very quick on adding. I'm going to include yes, I'm going to include this particular model. So now I've included that model, then what I should be able to do in the process is actually say I want to use that model in the process. So I want to reference No, it's going to play. I'm going to give up on that with just 5 minutes to go. But yeah, I can bring in a security model and again deploy that with that and run that and have other things happening within that. The other thing I really want to do very quickly is also the other thing. One of the other models we've got. Again, we have a different type of one of the other models we have is a service model, and this is a way of describing external services. In this case, it's a REST service, and I'm actually using an internal REST service here, where I'm going to call out to a REST service and describe how to map the information from that REST service into process variables, input that I'm going to pass into this service, and things that I want to get from that service. And again, this is something which maybe a developer would actually set up, but once it's set up, I've now got a service model that I can use within my process. And so if I go back to the processes, what I can do here is maybe what I want to do is actually add an additional check so that, is there a service, is there a case already open? Is somebody already going through an application process? Well, that service task actually calls out and says, get me all the applications that are currently running. And what I could do is I can do things like I can just add in a service registry task here and say I want to use that particular service model, count the cases with a particular name. I want to use that particular operation with there, which was to get a count. And then automatically there's things for me to fill in terms of what I need to be able to pass in and map out. So the process key in this case is it's a loan application is the key for the process. And the thing that I'm going to look up is basically anything that's got the same name as the existing application. So basically what's going to happen is I'm going to call a service registry with the name of the person that's applying now and look, are there any other process instances, active process applications for somebody with the same name? And then what I'm going to get out at the end is a number which is going to be the total of those, and I'm going to say I just want to map that to total count. And I don't think I'm going to have time to actually run this, but that doesn't matter. You'll get the idea. So now what will happen is I'll run through the process, it will call out the service task, it will query that, and will get me back the total of people. And then what I can do in this particular thing is add in an additional text field at the bottom here, another information field that I can use to tell somebody that, something like that. So now I can actually put additional information as we're going through there. I'm not going to have time to run all of that, unfortunately, so you'll have to wait till I do this in a webinar, and then you can look at a video online. The other thing I wanted to show you in terms of the sort of the same type of low-code idea is one of the other features you've got is the idea of pages. So let me save stuff. And a page is a way of creating a custom dashboard that can again be associated with an application and bundled with an application. So here I could bring on a task list and say that for this task list, this is a list of all the open tasks, and I can say that it's that I want it to. That I want it to show, basically I can do sort of filtering on, is it all the unassigned ones? Actually, I just want to show all the open ones. It's difficult to do when I'm looking in the wrong place. Oops. I just want to show the open tasks. And I can bring in, case lists as well, so I can see all the open cases. And again, I could say I want to filter this on the open. Yep, running. Maybe I want to bring in a chart as well as stuff that's going on here. Where I want to. No, I'm not going to. There's not time. But let me just save that as well. So again, I've created a sort of quick dashboard thing, and I want to add that to the application, so I can go to the loan app and I can say that for this particular loan app, I do want to, as well as all those other changes, I want to also add some additional pages there. And so these will come, with a URL key, and I can say that I want to include my dashboard there. So now when I publish, save this and publish it and deploy it, then hopefully everything's deployed. Now, if I actually come back and run things very quickly, let me just terminate that case so we don't need to see all of it happening. If I was to start again with some work, and I'm going to start that loan case and say manners, I'm not sure this is necessarily going to work. As we go through, this is from the UK. We're going to review him, we're going to say we're going to accept him. You can see, oh, look, there's already one other application by this person underway, because this is the active one. If there'd been more, then I would have got a big number going here. So you can actually see I'm actually pulling in the information from the service task there. If I accept that. Notifications, please stop interfering. We go into the escalated review, we can say we still accept that, and now we go on to the assigning a manager. We'll have Ben Snow again, and we'll have Ben's, now let's have Sunny, she's prettier than Ben. Oh, how could I say such a thing? We inform the acceptance this time. We'll have Ben's photo there, but maybe the letter, if the demigods have been with me, will be slightly different because I was from the UK and I was too young, so I should have been rejected. Oh, it's taking a while today. There we go. And we can see there's after considering your situation very carefully, so we used a different template here because it was someone from the UK, and with Brexit and everything that's happening, then, it doesn't matter how much money they've got if they, everyone's a dodgy option there. And so if we complete that, we'll have finished the process. And you can see now, we've only got the 1 month for repayment, but we've got repay early here. Because it was a manual task, using the CMMN, I haven't had to do anything, but now it's there as an action within my UI. It's an action within my UI. Again, there's APIs that allow you to say what actions are available for this person in a particular context. And if it doesn't matter if you've modeled it as a user event within the case, or whether it's modeled as a manual activation on a task or a process, then you can actually provide that to the end user without having to write any particular code at all. So that's where I'm going to finish. Oh, no, is there a page? No. Oh, what's happened with my...
Refresh.
Oh, I do need to refresh. Thank you very much. Oh, there's my loan app with my custom dashboard. Again, I didn't have to write a line of code, and there we go. Here's all the open tasks, here's the open cases. I could have had some of my pretty charts there as well. So there we go. I think I deserve a round of applause for trying to get all of that working live. Thank you.